May it please the court. This is usually what you hear from a prosecutor when you're in the courtroom and they're presenting their case. But the Office of the Commonwealth's Attorney is more than just that. It's community engagement, community programs, and yes, there to serve the community. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville, and you're joining us for our Community Impact Series as we peel back and delve into the work of the Office of Portsmouth Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, with none other than Commonwealth's Attorney, Stephanie Morales. Once again, I want to thank you for joining us, as you always do, as we broadcast from the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from none other than WNSB, Hot 91, the soul of VA. As always, we hope that you're enjoying your summer, and staying safe, having fun, and getting a break because the fall is right around the corner. And as we know here on campus, the fall is around the corner, so students are gearing up to move back in. I can't believe that time has flown like it has, but we are grateful for it, as we all are grateful for the great support of the Spartan Nation, and we're able to do what we do because of you. Well, once again, during this summertime period, this is a great opportunity for us to really talk with people who are doing the work of the people in the community. Now, on this show, we delve into a lot of heavy talk about politics and policy. And given our state of politics now, there's always something to talk about. But this summertime, we love to delve into and talk with people who are doing the work of the community, our public servants, and people that are working for nonprofits and such. And today we have with us, I would just say Spartan royalty, somebody who is no stranger to this particular institution and this station, but none other than the Portsmouth Commonwealth's Attorney, Stephanie Morales. Stephanie, how do you feel this morning?
I feel great. Thank you for having me this morning. How are you?
Well, it's always good to have you here in Sparta. How does it feel to come back on campus every now and then? I know you're busy.
It feels like home. It's always home. It's always good to be home.
That's right.
It always feels like home.
So, being home, is never foreign to you. And one thing that you always do, you always support your green and gold. So we appreciate the support, and also your Delta Sigma Theta.
That's right. That's right. Behold the green and gold with a side of ooh.
That's it. That's it. So once again, when we talk about the Commonwealth's Attorney in our community and a lot of others, persons are a little afraid.
Yes.
They don't like talking about the Commonwealth's Attorney because usually there's nothing good to talk about. We're going to delve into what that's all about, but I want to get into your journey just for a second because, talking with you, I'm talking with one of two Black females, I believe, in Hampton Roads who are Commonwealth's attorneys.
Yes.
And for those of you who are in another jurisdiction that are listening to this show in another state, it's the same as a district attorney.
Yes.
So they are the DA, for that city. But what was your journey for a young girl from Portsmouth, P-Town, to say, hey, I want to be Commonwealth's Attorney of Portsmouth?
So it was a journey that really started when I was a little girl. And I actually have a children's book. It's called The Day I Became a Lawyer. And it talks about how my mom engaged with me when I was younger and how I wasn't very excited about career day at school. And she took me to visit the courthouse because, of course, she knew me very well. She knew my personality, and she thought that I might be interested in what was going on in the courthouse, and she was right. So I actually went to observe in court when I was around 6 years old, and there was so much action going on. It was exciting. But most importantly, when I was little, I always had a regard for fairness. I didn't do well with people telling me that's not, you can't say that's not fair. If something wasn't fair, that set with me. So I've always been justice oriented. Wow. I wasn't interested necessarily in the criminal law, but I was interested in being in the courtroom and in litigation. And so as time passed, of course, I went to law school. I thought I was going to do intellectual property.
Okay.
But I also had my two sons. I had them at 20 and 22. So when I started law school, they were babies. And I was in Williamsburg at William and Mary, another green and gold school.
That's right.
And I said, I'm taking the first internship I get in Portsmouth, Virginia this summer because I wanted to be home. And that happened to be at the Portsmouth Commonwealth Attorney's Office. Wow. And so in my first year in law school, interning at the Portsmouth Commonwealth Attorney's Office, I got a very clear view of how the justice system worked, how much power prosecutors had in their ability to either do harm or make a positive difference. And so quickly, my wheels started turning about prosecution. Still was not interested in politics. But then, of course, as you know, if you are a change-oriented person, if you want change, sometimes you have to be that change. And so that's how it went. From childhood, I knew I always wanted to be an attorney. That was without question. And then ultimately in learning more about the criminal legal system and the power that prosecutors have, I became interested in prosecution. And then 3 years into being in the office at 31 years old, that's when I got elected 11 years ago in 2015 as Commonwealth's attorney.
Wow. Hats off to your mother.
Yes. Who works at Norfolk State as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Miss Laster, shout out to you.
My girl. Yes.
You mentioned career day, and my mind went back as well. I remember career day, third grade. What did you want to be when you grew up? And I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, and I spelled it Lawer. And a classmate that said, "That's lawyer. That's not spelled right." But to your point, it's great that you had that aspiration and that inspiration at that very young age. Being at that young age and having that desire, that drive. In the book that you've written, was that part of your drive to write that book to inspire other young ladies and other young people to catch hold to their dream as well?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I do, and I know we'll get into this more, but I engage with young people all the time. Yeah. Sometimes they're in the office shadowing. Other times I'm in their schools, but I'm constantly engaging with young people for that exact reason. They have to be able to see and visualize in order to envision themselves in these roles. And so I would always tell that story, and I would ask the children a question. I would say, "What do you think I like? What do you think I like to do? Just from your observations of me so far." And they will say all kinds of things. "Oh, we think you like fashion. We think you like, you like to study." And one of the students will always get it. I would say, "What do you think I like? What do you like to talk?" And so that was one of the things that children relate to. And when I would tell them the story of how I always had a notation on my report card, they would say A's, and I would say, "No, B's." "No, C's?" And I'm like, "No." And so then they would always circle around and say like, "Oh, talkative." They're like, "I'm talkative too." And so just little things that young people can relate to. When I would tell them the story, I would see them come to life. And so it was actually my husband's idea. Let's turn this into a children's book. Let's expound on this. Let's spread this. Let's expand the reach and try to touch more children with something they can relate to. Because yes, I go in there and I talk to them about the way the system works, what I do, the formalities of it, but they need something they can relate to. And especially when they're young, they can relate to, being bored during career day, going and visiting the courthouse and seeing all the different things that are going on, and being a little talkative, having a notation on your report card. So just being able to relate to them and, again, expanding the reach. And really we see how brilliant our young people are when we engage with them. We want them to envision everything for themselves. Careers in the law, judges, future presidents. We want them to see all of that in themselves, and so we have to show it to them.
And the great thing about it is that we have examples such as yourself and others really straight out of Portsmouth, that they can see that happen. Listen, I take a second here. If you look at Portsmouth now, little old P-Town.
Yes.
And you look at the seat of power.
Yes.
For the state, the Commonwealth of Virginia, which of course is probably the most important state in our United States with its proximity to D.C. and also its history. It's run by African Americans. From the representation in the state all the way to the sheriff's office, to your office, to the mayor's office. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. When you see that, and at your stage, do you take a step back and just paint yourself and be like, "I'm part of this"?
No, because that's the way we were raised in Portsmouth. That's a part of how I was raised in my home with my mother, my parents. That's how I was raised in community. Even at IC Norcom High School, we were raised to be community oriented, to care about the world around us and not just what was going on with ourselves. And I have always had the mindset that until all of us are okay, none of us are. And so when I look around and I'm a part of leadership and I see others who I went to school with or who I know, Secretary of the Commonwealth, we've known each other since high school. We went to Norfolk State. We marched together in the Spartan Legion.
Okay. Shout out to the Legion.
And shout out to the Legion and shout out to the Secretary of the Commonwealth. I am not surprised because this is what we were trained to do. This is how we were raised. And so it doesn't feel like a shocker. And again, I've been at this for 11 years now. I'm in my 4th term. So, I've been in the trenches really trying to do the work of equity and changing the shape of what prosecution looks like. And you said when we first started that people are intimidated by prosecutors, don't want to talk to prosecutors. That's because this profession has been harmful. And we have to acknowledge that if we want to see a change. And so I acknowledge that my profession has done harm. It is my goal every single day to do everything I can to end the harm, to undo the harm, and to see our community transition into an equity situation, into a situation where our community members get to thrive and not just survive.
Doing good and no harm at all, making sure the community is lifted up and be an example to everyone that is around. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville, and you're joining us for our Community Impact Series as we peel back and take a look at the good work of the Office of Portsmouth Commonwealth's Attorney with none other than the Commonwealth's Attorney herself, Stephanie Morales. NSU, definitely alum and also a great supporter of this institution. NSU royalty right here in the studio. When we talk, let's now take a look at the Office of the Commonwealth's Attorney. Yes. As we were talking before, we see, law shows, Law and Order, and for those that remember LA Law and all the others, when we take a look at the court system or the court itself, a lot of people are afraid of it. For many reasons, they're afraid. And with that being the case, it's because, as you mentioned, it's done a lot of harm to a lot of our community. Mm-hmm. But the Office of the Commonwealth is more than just prosecuting those that do wrong. Tell us a little bit about what the Office of the Commonwealth's Attorney is and the other programs and initiatives specifically that you have for your city.
Yes. So I have to say it is about the way we do prosecution as well. So a part of this, for any who may not know what prosecutors do and what district attorneys or Commonwealth attorneys do, we're responsible for prosecuting crimes in the city. And so anything from murder, homicide, on down to DUIs and, anything in between, our office is responsible for prosecuting those matters and holding people accountable. But one thing that we are seeing around our nation is the lack of accountability for system actors. So while we handle our business in the courtroom, we try to do it in a way where we are, really being tenacious with violent crime and things that harm our community. And we're taking a different approach to nonviolent matters and maybe matters that are situations where we need to look at behavioral health care resources or mental health courts or whether there's a drug-related issue, and taking an approach where we're caring about the person who is involved on all sides and recognizing that as prosecutors, we don't just represent a victim, we also represent the accused and we represent the entire community. So again, taking an approach where we're paying attention to what we're doing and we're trying to end the cycle of mass incarceration as opposed to adding to that. We cannot incarcerate our way into safe communities. We are simultaneously over-incarcerated and less safe. So that's the first thing I have to say. The way we do prosecution matters. And then police accountability. As a Black woman, I have seen, and we all have seen, the harm that has been done to the Black community by law enforcement and system actors. And one of the very first things that happened when I got elected in 2015 was there was an officer-involved shooting where a white officer killed a Black unarmed young man. His name was William Chapman II. And I oversaw that investigation. I indicted. I first prosecuted that case, a year of pretrial motions, a week-long jury trial, and resulting in a voluntary manslaughter conviction for that officer who went to prison. And so in Portsmouth, we saw something that had not been seen and still is not being seen in many instances around the country. And because it was the first time that I had seen it, I first chaired that case myself because I wanted my team to know that I would not ask something of them that I would not do myself. And so that commitment to fairness and justice, no matter what it looks like, no matter what the stakes are, no matter the risk to my own reelection, it's out the window. We have to do this thing called prosecution a certain way if we are committed to change. So before talking about any programs, I just needed to talk about that, the way we do the job.
Right. Mentioning that, that aspect of criminal justice from the prosecutorial standpoint is different because usually to get elected as the Commonwealth's attorney or DA in another jurisdiction, you got to be seen as tough on crime.
Yeah.
But we saw a wave of change, especially across the country and here in the Hampton Roads, where it's about being smart on crime.
That's right.
But how? Because like you said, it could jeopardize your reelection.
Mm-hmm.
How was that received? That about face received when you initiated that approach?
Well, my community knew what I was about. And so in 2015, that so-called progressive prosecutor movement, it wasn't around yet. And so 2014 was a time in our country where we were dealing with Ferguson. Yeah. And so we were having conversations as a part of my election process in forums and in civic leagues and in public engagements where I was saying, if we deal with this in our community, which I hope we do not, I will address it. And questions were coming up. Will you ask for a special prosecutor? And I said, no, if there's no conflict, I will not. My office will handle the case. And that's exactly what we did. And so the conversations were being had. When Portsmouth elected me in 2015, they knew what they were getting. And so it was never a secret where I stood in terms of accountability and what that looks like, because the bottom line is the members of our community have always been held accountable. Uh-huh. Why would there be a different standard for system actors than there is for the members of our community who come first? Uh-huh. So it wasn't an about face for me because the community elected me and they knew what was coming. The real test was in 2017 because I won in a special election. Yeah. So I came up for re-election around 2 years later. The real test was, did this community want to stick to that model? And again, we're very serious with violent crime and with keeping the community safe, but being smart and working against incarceration has always been a part of the hallmark of what I wanted to do as a prosecutor and the value system that I wanted my office to have.
And to your point, you still get the positive results. Mm-hmm. The only difference is that now you're giving people an opportunity, keeping the community safe, but giving people an opportunity to reenter or do good in society. Right. Which is very similar to something that you were a part of this past week in the conjunction with the Speaker of the House and the Commonwealth's, the Secretary of the Commonwealth. Yes. Another two Portsmouth powerhouses, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that initiative and how that works hand in hand for your office.
Yes. So we held a clean slate seminar where we invited the community in to learn about changes that took place in the Commonwealth of Virginia on July 1st, where it creates an opportunity for the sealing of records that have been around for 7 years, in certain instances automatically, in other instances people have to petition. We really wanted to shed light on that process, demystify, make sure that people understand what they're eligible for so that they take advantage of every opportunity to have a second chance. Because the reality is people who've had records, those records hamper them in their ability to find employment, to find housing, and in certain instances, education. And part of the root cause of crime is lack of opportunity, lack of access to housing, food insecurity. All of these things are impacted when people don't get second chances. And if they've been held accountable and they've done what they needed to do to be responsible for whatever they did and a significant period of time has passed, it doesn't make sense for us to continue to punish. It only harms their progress and the progress of the community. And so that's what the seminar and the program was about. It was about bringing the information to the community, because if the information is there but no one takes advantage of it, it does a disservice.
Absolutely.
So that's what that was about. And the way that ties into my office is I've always been an advocate for second chances publicly, advocating at the state level, advocating, at the local level. And I have a program in my office called Control Alt Delete that is centered around people who are presently or have formerly been incarcerated. And so since 2015, that kicked off in 2015 and is still going, my office and I have held seminars in the community, in state prisons, and we have brought the information to the people who are impacted about how to get their rights restored, about job preparedness, holding resume workshops, providing a list of 100 employers that will hire people with criminal records, and again, trying to bring the information to the people who can benefit from it, even again in instances where they are presently incarcerated, so that when they step out, they are ready to create opportunities for themselves to earn money, to provide for their families, again, trying to address the root causes of crime, removing barriers for people just being able to live and provide so that they are not tempted to go back into whatever it was that landed them in a state of incarceration in the first place. So this seminar that we had, it ties directly into the work that we've been doing for the past 11 years and the commitment that we've had. Again, not just to everything that sounds pretty,
Right.
but to delving into areas where prosecutors are not expected to go.
You know, I attended that session, and it was just an overwhelming surprise at the amount of support and attendance that the very first one, I believe, right?
Yes.
The very
Yes.
first session or forum that you guys had there. I mean, it was amazing. Shout out to Cut's program
Yes.
over there doing amazing work. The open up the facility, and the people came.
Yes, they did.
The people came. And you mentioned earlier that the program itself helps to give a second chance to people that may have just been in the wrong place at the wrong time and got caught up by a aggressive prosecutorial office as opposed to a progressive prosecutorial office. So,
Yes.
again, shout out to you guys and hats off to you for that good work that
Thank
you're
you.
doing in the community. But not just that. Getting people an opportunity for second chances, but there are other programs that your office also have to make an impact in the community. Take a few moments to talk about a few of those.
So my favorite program is called the Future Leaders Initiative. And that's the program where we bring young people as young as they can pay attention. So we've had them as young as 5 years old, all the way up through, postgraduate law students, anywhere in between. We've had field trips with the Portsmouth high schools. We've had students from all over Hampton Roads and even students from out of the area where we bring them in. They spend at least a day with us. Sometimes we have them for multiple days, and they learn about what happens in our office, and we do as much as we can to expose them to the entirety of the criminal justice system. We have them meet defense attorneys, they meet judges, and when they go in the courtroom, we always rent out a courtroom. We ask the court if we can come and visit in a courtroom. They meet court reporters, they meet the courtroom staff, they see what the deputies do, and then I always invite them to go sit up where the judges sit. And then I make them take a picture whether they want to or not.
Okay.
Once again, so that they envision themselves as the future judges, as the future lawyers. We do mock trials, we have exercises, and we see something come to life in these students. They are brilliant. And we see a switch flip on where, the ones who are undecided, they start thinking about a career in the law. And the ones who have decided, it's solidified. And so that has also been going on since 2015, where we have been bringing young people, and we've had over 400. Wow. And some of our Future Leaders Initiative graduates, we call them junior Commonwealth attorneys, have become licensed practicing attorneys.
Wow.
So, it's now been enough time has passed over the course of 11 years that we have seen multiple students who are now licensed practicing attorneys. I know for sure in Virginia and North Carolina. And so that has been an absolute joy.
Yes.
We have a group of students who are coming on the 31st. So it's, we always have this programming, and it is always exciting.
Yes.
They breathe life when they come through the courthouse. Everybody is excited to see them. Everybody embraces them, the judges, the other attorneys. But it's just been a beautiful thing watching that program and, every single year engaging with our young people and getting them to see themselves as the future leaders of our criminal justice system.
Wow, 5 years old.
5 years old, very young, and they are some of the most well-behaved. They come in court and they listen.
But they probably don't have cell phones yet, so
they do. The little ones have cell phones, but they are excellent. I mean, we underestimate again the brilliance of these young people, and when they are interested in something and they're captivated, their attention spans are very impressive.
Absolutely amazing.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing.
Yes.
So the future leaders, and there's also programs that you take outside of the proverbial four walls of the courthouse. Tell us a little bit about those programs.
So Future Leaders also goes outside. We've taken that outside as well. As I mentioned earlier, Control Alt Delete goes outside. And then another one that's youth-centered is called Social Media by the Statutes. And so
now, tell us about this one.
So this was based on a need where we saw some behaviors that were taking place in school, where students were doing things with their phone and utilizing social media, disseminating images, and it was getting them in trouble. They were getting charged. and it was harmful. If you can think of photographs that may be passed around now that we have cell phone technology, airdropping, things of that nature. Cyberbullying. And so we had a program that we put together, and we try to make it cool. But, I will tell you, students don't need that. They're not really interested in the cool stuff, but we tried to make it interesting and exciting. But basically, we wanted to show the students how their behaviors could line up with criminal action. And so we know that there are school rules, and whether they take them seriously or not, they're kids. Their brains are not fully developed. Right. But we do need them to understand how those rules tie into the criminal law and how you could be charged. Also, it's been very important for students to understand certain concepts like concert of action. Having them understand that who you are around. We say this all the time, the company you keep impacts your future. But do you understand what concert of action means? Do you understand that if you get in the car with somebody who commits a robbery and they come running out and somebody's shooting at you all and you drive away because you're afraid, you may not have been willing to participate with that, but the system actors who are charging you, they could look at that and say you are an accomplice and therefore you are in concert and now you are responsible for this robbery as well. And so teaching concepts that students may not have heard of, demystifying myths. You have some young teens who hang with young adults. The young adults will say, if we get caught or we get in trouble, you take the charge because you're a juvenile and this won't be on your record.
Right.
Well, they don't understand that number one, you can be tried as an adult after a certain age. And number two, certain things are appearing on your record in a certain way. So if you get in trouble as an adult, the exposure that you have to more jail time, it goes up substantially if you had a record as a juvenile. And so all of these things, I watch the children's faces light up because I know it's happening. Yeah. They have some people around them who do not mean them well and who will manipulate them in their naivety. And so we do everything that we can to support them in that way as well. I don't do scared straight because, again, when I look at our students, I see their brilliance. And when we go to engage with them, they are respectful, they are attentive, they ask questions. And so part of it is we want to inspire them to be the future leaders, but we also want to arm them with information and make sure that they understand the things that could get them in harm's way and that they stay away from people and activities that will be harmful and will, jeopardize their future.
Stephanie Morales, NSU alum and royalty, has taken the mantra of this institution to the Office of the Commonwealth of Portsmouth, Commonwealth's attorney, where she sees the future in you. Yes. In our last final moments, again, just phenomenal information about what you're doing, the impact that you're making. And we both know that impact becomes legacy.
Yes.
When you find your time where you say, you know what, it's time for me to step away, what do you envision your legacy being?
A legacy of equity. Truly, everything that I do is about pushing us into an equity model, not equality. Making sure that people understand that we cannot treat everybody the same, that, acknowledging what has been done yes. by this profession has been so harmful that it is going to require generations of people who are committed yes. to equity. And so that's what I want. I want the legacy to be a continued fight to bring this system to an equity model where we are giving people what they need. And when I say people, I mean the entire community, the community at large, keeping it safe while reducing mass incarceration, that we're treating those who are accused of crimes fairly, that they have opportunities for second chances, that we're treating victims fairly. Yes. And that we're, treating everyone as a person. We're seeing the humanity in everyone we serve, and we're not treating cases like files. And that, again, we look outside of the office, that we understand it's so much bigger than what happens in the courtroom, but it really is going to require every person who has power to use that power for the good of the community and for equity and to address the root causes of crime.
Awesome.
One of the things that happened when I first was running in 2015 was I was talking about all of this. And I was talking about being smart on crime. And someone asked, do you want to be a social worker or a prosecutor? And my response was, I will be a social worker, a prosecutor, a teacher, and anything and everything that my community needs me to be as I work towards an equity model and something that pushes us towards a community where we can all thrive.
Engaged in the community, making a difference for a legacy of equity. That's none other than Stephanie Morales, Commonwealth's attorney for the great city of Portsmouth. And as always, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for listening, as you always do, as we broadcast from the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from none other than WNSB Hot 91 of Solar VA. As always, be good, be great, God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Claville.